The red scarf. I was never the type to believe in curses or ghosts, but after what happened last Valentine's night, I don't sleep without checking the windows. I don't walk alone, and I never ever pick up anything I find on the ground. It was snowing heavily, the kind of winter night where silence presses down on you, thick and endless. I had just left my friend's cabin after a small Valentine's gathering. The others were staying overnight, but I had work in the morning and didn't want to crash on a couch. The road home was a narrow path through the woods, barely visible under the fresh snowfall. I pulled my coat tighter, my breath coming out in short clouds, and tried to ignore the feeling that I wasn't alone. Then I saw it. Lying on the snow ahead of me was a red scarf, a deep blood-red shade, stark against the white. The way it was stretched out, perfectly placed in the middle of the path, made it feel deliberate. Like someone wanted me to see it. I should have walked past it, I should have ignored it, but something about that color, that rich, hypnotic red, made me stop. It felt familiar. I reached down and picked it up. The fabric was warm. Not just from the cold of my fingers, it was warm like someone had just been wearing it. A slight shiver ran down my spine. That's when I noticed the note tucked into the folds. It was a small, yellowed piece of paper. The handwriting was delicate, almost hesitant, as if whoever wrote it had been shaking. "I'm so glad you came back, love." My stomach twisted. I turned the note over, looking for anything else, and my breath hitched when I saw the name at the bottom. It was mine. The snow seemed to press in around me, the silence suddenly unbearable. My heart pounded in my ears. Someone was messing with me. A stupid joke. One of my friends, maybe. But as I glanced around, the woods were still, empty, just dark silhouettes of trees stretching in every direction. I swallowed hard and shoved the scarf into my coat pocket. My hands felt numb, but not from the cold. I just needed to get home. The walk felt longer than usual. Every crunch of snow under my boots made me flinch. I kept glancing over my shoulder, convinced I would see something moving between the trees. The scarf in my pocket felt heavier than it should have. My jacket suddenly smelled different, like roses, but not fresh ones. The scent was faded, mixed with something metallic. By the time I reached my house, my fingers were trembling too much to fit the key in the lock. I finally forced the door open and slammed it shut behind me. My breathing was unsteady, my pulse drumming in my ears. I pulled the scarf from my pocket and threw it onto the kitchen table, staring at it like it might move on its own. It looked normal, just fabric, but I could still feel its warmth. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I was tired, my mind playing tricks on me. It was just a scarf, just a stupid scarf someone left behind. Maybe someone with my name, coincidence, that's all. But then I saw the footprints leading from my front door, tracking across the floor. Wet prints, bare feet. And they weren't mine. My breath caught in my throat. The steps led straight to the table, right to where I had placed the scarf. My entire body went cold. I had locked the door. I was alone. Wasn't I? A soft sound made my stomach drop. A whisper, barely audible. I turned sharply, my eyes scanning the dimly lit room. Nothing, just the hum of the fridge, the faint howl of the wind outside. My fingers clenched into fists. Maybe the snow had melted from my boots in an odd pattern. Maybe my mind was running wild. Then the whisper came again, closer. "You came back." The air left my lungs in a sharp gasp. I turned, grabbing the scarf in a panic, shoving it back into my coat. I didn't know why, but the sight of it made my skin crawl. I had to get rid of it. The fireplace. I ran to the living room, heart hammering, and threw the scarf into the flames. The fire roared higher, swallowing the fabric. Relief washed over me. It was gone. It was just a stupid scarf. And now it was... The lights flickered. The flames in the fireplace guttered, then flared. My relief shattered as a thick scent filled the room. Roses. Overpowering. Suffocating. And then the whisper came again, right behind me. "That won't work, love." A scream ripped from my throat as I spun around, my back hitting the mantel. But there was nothing, no one, just the cold air pressing against my skin. My chest heaved, my pulse erratic. Then I saw it. The scarf, hanging neatly on the coat rack by the door, untouched. As if it had never been burned, I bolted. I didn't think, I just ran. Out the door, into the snow, breath coming in ragged gasps. My car. I needed my car. My hands fumbled with the keys, my vision blurring. I yanked open the door and threw myself inside, locking it behind me. The engine roared to life. The headlights cut through the snowfall, illuminating the empty road. My hands were slick with sweat as I gripped the wheel. I didn't know where I was going, anywhere but here. Then, in the glow of the headlights, I saw a figure standing in the middle of the road. She wore a red scarf. Her face was shadowed, obscured by the heavy snowfall, but I could feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting. The car engine stuttered. The radio crackled to life, static filling the cabin. And then, through the interference, I heard it. "You came back, love." The last thing I remember is the sound of my own screams. They found my car the next morning, the driver's side door wide open, engine still running. The snow around it was undisturbed. No footprints, no sign of a struggle. Just one thing left on the seat. A red scarf. Story number 2, The Last Reservation. I should have known something was wrong the moment we stepped inside. The restaurant was too quiet. Not the kind of cozy quiet where couples whisper sweet nothings over candlelit dinners, but an eerie, suffocating silence, the kind that presses against your ears and makes your skin prickle. Snow had been falling heavily all evening, covering the streets in a thick, untouched blanket. We had driven nearly an hour through an empty highway just to get here, this exclusive hidden gem restaurant my boyfriend Eric had found online. He wanted something special for our first Valentine's dinner together, a night just for us. No crowds, no distractions, just good food and a beautiful view of the frozen lake behind the building. The place had no sign outside, just a single lantern flickering in the snow. I had questioned it, but Eric had smiled, squeezing my hand. "Trust me," he said. I wish I hadn't. The moment we stepped in, the door creaked shut behind us with a finality that made my stomach knot. A single waiter stood near the entrance, dressed in an old-fashioned black suit with white gloves. His face was long, pale, with sunken eyes that didn't seem to blink. "You're our last reservation," he said in a voice that barely carried. "Follow me." He led us through the dimly lit space, where every table was neatly set for 2, yet all were empty. The candles flickered even though there was no draft. The air smelled of something faintly sweet, almost metallic, like flowers left to rot. When we sat down, Eric grinned, oblivious to the weight pressing down on my chest. "See? Told you it'd be private." I forced a smile, but something felt wrong. There was no sound of a kitchen, no distant clatter of plates or murmured conversation, just the quiet scrape of the waiter's shoes against the wooden floor. He placed 2 menus in front of us, but when I opened mine, there were no prices. Just courses listed in a delicate cursive font. Appetizer, memories of the first meeting. Main course, the most painful goodbye. Dessert, regret served cold. I stared at Eric, expecting him to laugh, to say this was some elaborate themed dining experience. But he just looked at the menu, his face paling. His hands trembled slightly before he placed the menu down. I don't get the joke," he muttered. The waiter returned, holding a bottle of red wine. He poured 2 glasses, the liquid thick and dark, almost syrupy. "A special pairing," he said softly. "Best enjoyed without hesitation." I glanced around the room again. No kitchen doors, no other staff, no sound of wind or snowstorm outside. The window showed the frozen lake, but I swore something moved beneath the ice, something dark shifting just below the surface. Eric cleared his throat. I think we'll just start with water." The waiter's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "No one ever finishes the wine anyway." His words sent a chill through me, but before I could respond, the first course arrived. 2 small plates. Mine had a dish that looked eerily like the pasta I had on my first date with Eric. Same sauce, same plate design, same garnish of basil shaped like a heart. Eric's hands clenched the table. This is my mom's recipe," he whispered.
exactly how she made it.
Neither of us had told the restaurant what we liked. This wasn't some coincidence. I picked up my fork hesitantly, but before I could take a bite, a whisper filled the air. Not a voice, not words, just a breath, right against my ear. My stomach twisted violently. I put the fork down. Eric hadn't touched his plate either. The waiter simply stood by, watching, waiting. "We're leaving," I said abruptly, pushing my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, the sound too sharp, too loud. The waiter didn't move. "But you haven't had your main course." I grabbed my coat. "We're not staying." Eric was already on his feet, fumbling with his jacket, his face tense with unease. As we turned toward the exit, the lights flickered. The wall seemed closer than before, the candle flame stretching unnaturally high. Then the waiter said something that made my blood run cold. "The road home is closed now." I froze. My throat tightened. "What?" He gestured to the window. The snowstorm outside had worsened, the wind howling, visibility nearly zero. But beyond the frost-covered glass, I saw something that shouldn't have been there. A crowd of people, standing in the snow, still, silent, staring at us. Their faces were blurred, featureless shadows beneath the dim streetlight. But their presence made my entire body scream to run. Eric grabbed my wrist. "We're going." We bolted for the door, shoving it open, stumbling into the freezing night. The figures in the snow didn't move, they didn't follow, they just stood there watching. I fumbled with my phone, hands shaking. No signal, no service. The car was buried in snow, almost as if it had been there for years. Eric was muttering under his breath, "This isn't happening, this isn't happening." I turned back to the restaurant. The windows were dark, the flickering candles had gone out. But the door was wide open, and the waiter was standing in the entrance, his silhouette unnaturally tall against the darkness inside. "You forgot your dessert," he called out, his voice barely above a whisper. Something in his hands gleamed under the dim light. A silver tray. On it was a single frozen heart. Not chocolate, not candy. A real human heart, ice-crusted, veins still visible. The whispers returned, curling through the wind, a chorus of unseen voices. "You were the last reservation." The figures in the snow suddenly moved, all at once, a sharp jerking step forward. Eric grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the woods. "Run." I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what would happen if we stayed. We crashed through the trees, the branches clawing at us, the wind deafening. I don't know how long we ran, but eventually the night swallowed the whispers, the shadows, the restaurant. When we finally reached the main road, panting, bruised, covered in frost, a truck driver spotted us and pulled over. We told him about the restaurant, about the waiter, about the figures in the snow. He frowned. Then, slowly, he shook his head. "There's no restaurant like that out here," he said. "Not for years, burned down a decade ago." Eric and I turned, expecting to see the distant glow of candles, the outline of the eerie little building. But there was nothing. Just untouched snow, a frozen lake, and an endless empty road, and the faintest scent of something sweet in the air. Roses. We never spoke about that night again, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear the whisper, right against my ear. "You were the last reservation." Story number 3, Snow Angel. The snow was untouched when we arrived, a perfect unbroken blanket stretching across the empty field. The air was sharp, freezing enough to bite at my skin through the thick layers of my coat. It was supposed to be a quiet Valentine's getaway, just me and Emily, alone in the mountains, away from the noise of the city. She had always loved the snow, and I loved watching her lose herself in it, laughing, spinning, leaving behind those delicate, fleeting imprints in the ice. That's why, when she let go of my hand and ran ahead, I let her. Her laughter rang through the silence, warm against the cold. "Come on," she called back, already dropping onto her back, her arms and legs sweeping through the fresh powder. A snow angel. I stood there for a moment, watching her carve her place into the white. The wind whistled through the trees, a low, mournful sound. My breath clouded in front of me. Something about the moment felt too still, too heavy. I turned away for only a second, just to zip up my coat, just to shake off the creeping chill that had settled in my bones. When I looked back, Emily was gone. The snow angel remained. But something was wrong. The imprint she left behind wasn't right. It was stretched, distorted. The arms weren't arms anymore. They bent at strange angles, too long, the fingers digging deep grooves into the snow. The legs were wrong, too. Instead of the soft round shape left by her boots, the marks twisted outward, jagged like claws. My stomach dropped. Emily. My voice cracked, the name swallowed by the wind. I took a step forward. The air felt heavier, too thick. The snow around the angel was undisturbed. No prints leading away. No sign that she had gotten up and walked off. I should have run then. I should have turned and never looked back. But I fell to my knees beside the imprint, touching the place where she had been. The snow was freezing, wet against my gloves. And deep inside the hollow shape, the ice had turned red. Something was moving beneath the snow. I scrambled back, my breath a sharp, ragged gasp. The ice shifted, cracked, as if something was pressing up from underneath. A whisper slid through the wind, soft and distant. Not Emily's voice. Something else. Something wrong. Then the snow angel moved. The impression in the ice twisted, the grooves shifting, widening, the arms bent further outward, the legs stretched, and then slowly the head of the imprint turned toward me. I staggered to my feet. My vision blurred, my pulse hammering in my ears. It wasn't possible. It wasn't real. I had to be seeing things. Emily was just... she had just... A hand shot up from the ice. Fingers, long and blackened with frostbite, clawed at the air. Another hand followed, pulling, dragging something up from the ground. A figure was rising from the imprint, its body shifting unnaturally, bones cracking like frozen branches. It wasn't Emily. Its face was hollow. A gaping, stretched mouth. No eyes, just empty black sockets. And yet I knew it was looking at me. It lurched forward. The snow beneath it caved in, as if the ground itself had opened up. My legs finally obeyed me, and I ran. I didn't think, I didn't breathe, I just ran. The snow was deep, my feet slipping, sinking, but I didn't stop. The trees blurred past me. The wind howled, a voice buried inside of it, whispering my name. Something was behind me. I could hear it, the soft crunch of footsteps, but wrong, like they weren't above the snow, but inside it. The cabin was close. I could see the lights glowing through the storm, a beacon in the endless white. My boots hit the wooden steps. I lunged for the door, fumbling with the lock. My fingers were numb, shaking. Then just as I got the door open, I heard it. Laughter. Soft. Lilting. Familiar. Emily's laughter. I turned. She stood there in the snow. Not far, just at the edge of the tree line, her red scarf trailing behind her in the wind. She smiled at me. Tilted her head, her blonde hair dusted with frost. Relief flooded my chest. I almost collapsed. "Emily," I breathed. Where did you go?" She didn't answer. She just lifted one hand, curling her fingers toward me in a slow, beckoning motion. Something inside me screamed not to move. The wind shifted. The snow at her feet was untouched. No footprints. No sign that she had ever walked there at all. My relief turned to ice. Emily never wore a red scarf. The door slammed shut behind me. The lights flickered, then went out. I don't remember moving. I don't remember anything but the crushing darkness and the sound of my own heartbeat slamming in my ears. When the power came back an hour later, I checked outside. The snow was smooth, undisturbed. No footprints, no scarf, just the snow angel. Still there, still wrong. And this time, there was more than one. I never found her. The police searched for weeks. The rescue teams combing through the mountains, the frozen lakes, every possible path she could have taken. Nothing. No sign of a struggle. No tracks. Just the endless, untouched snow. They think she wandered off. that she fell through the ice somewhere, her body buried beneath the cold. But I know the truth. She never left. She's still out there, watching, waiting. Every time it snows, I see the angels in my yard. And every time, they're getting closer. Story number 4. The Stranger in My Photo Album. I never liked looking at old pictures. Something about them always unsettled me. The way they froze time, trapping a moment forever, even when the people in them were long gone. But when my mother passed away last winter, I had no choice. Someone had to go through her things, and since I was an only child, that someone was me. It was snowing hard the day I found the album. The attic was freezing, dust floating in the dim light as I pried open the old wooden chest where my mother had stored all her keepsakes. Among the yellowed letters and brittle newspapers was a leather-bound photo album. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't like the other albums she had, the ones filled with happy memories of birthdays and family vacations. This one looked older. Curious, I opened it. The first few pages were harmless. Baby pictures of me, my mother holding me in the hospital, my father grinning beside us, pictures of our old house long before we moved. As I flipped through, a strange feeling settled in my stomach. There was something off about the photos, something I couldn't put my finger on at first. Then I saw him. In a picture of my first birthday party, there was a man standing in the background. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't part of the celebration. Just standing there near the back fence, his hands in his coat pockets, head slightly tilted. His face was blurred, the way people look when they move too fast for the camera to catch them properly. But I could tell he was looking at me. I turned the page. Another photo, this time from my 5th birthday. The same man farther back near the trees, almost hidden in the shadows. Still watching. I flipped faster, my hands suddenly unsteady. Christmas, 1998. I was in front of the tree, unwrapping a present. Through the window behind me, in the reflection of the glass, was the man. He was in every single picture. My breath hitched. This wasn't normal. It wasn't possible. I stared at the photos, heart pounding. Who the hell was he? Why had I never noticed him before? I dug through the chest, searching for answers. Nothing, no letters, no notes, no explanation for the stranger, who had apparently been there my entire life. A chill ran down my spine. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of one of the photos, zooming in on the man's face. It was still blurred, still wrong, but the closer I looked, the more certain I became of something. He wasn't getting older. From my first birthday to my graduation, he was exactly the same. Same coat, same blank stare. I slammed the album shut, my pulse racing. My body felt ice cold, like the temperature in the attic had dropped 10 degrees. I needed air. I needed to get out of there. But as I turned to leave, something stopped me. A whisper. Software close. My breath fogged in the freezing air. I turned slowly, my stomach twisting. The album had fallen open again. A new page. A photo I had never seen before. It was of me, not as a child. Now sitting on the attic floor, holding the album, and behind me. The floorboards creaked. I ran. I didn't stop to look back. I barely managed to grab my coat before throwing myself out into the snow, my boots crunching against the ice. My chest was tight, my breath coming in short gasps. The world outside felt too quiet. The sky was dark, the streetlights casting long, skeletal shadows over the driveway. I fumbled for my car keys, my hand shaking too hard to get the door unlocked. My pulse was deafening in my ears. I kept glancing back at the house, expecting to see something move in the attic window. Nothing, just the empty glass. Then my phone buzzed. I jumped so hard I nearly dropped it. The screen lit up an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered with a shaky breath. Hello? Silence. Then a whisper, faint, almost familiar. You finally see me. The call cut off. The air left my lungs in a sharp exhale. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. I forced myself to look up at the house one last time, and that's when I saw him, standing just beyond the streetlight, barely visible in the swirling snow. The same coat, The same tilted head, not a photograph this time, not a reflection. He was real, and he was waiting. I left that night and never went back. The house, the album, everything, I let it go, moved to a new city, started fresh. But sometimes, when I walk past a reflective surface, I swear I see him, just standing there, watching. Story number 5. The Gift That Bled. The box was waiting for me when I got home. A small, perfectly wrapped package sat on my doorstep, a bright red ribbon tied neatly around it. Snow had collected on top, undisturbed, as if it had been placed there just moments before I arrived. No footprints, no delivery truck driving away, just the box. I hesitated. I hadn't ordered anything. It wasn't my birthday, and Valentine's Day. Well, I had no one to expect a gift from. My last relationship ended months ago, and I hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks. I picked it up slowly, the cold seeping through my gloves. There was no note, no tag, just a box, perfectly square, heavier than it looked. Something about it felt wrong. Inside, my house was quiet except for the hum of the radiator struggling against the winter chill. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the package, my stomach twisting. I should have ignored it, thrown it away. But something about it pulled at me like a whisper in the back of my mind telling me to open it. So I did. The ribbon slid off too easily, the paper peeling away in a single smooth motion. The box beneath was plain, old, the edges slightly worn. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in black velvet, was a heart-shaped locket. It was beautiful, delicate, the gold chain coiled like a sleeping snake. I should have been relieved. It was just jewelry. But the moment I picked it up, something dripped from the clasp, dark red, thick, wet blood. I jerked back, my chair scraping against the floor. The locket swung in my grip, leaving a small crimson smear on my fingers. My breath hitched. This wasn't normal. This wasn't a prank. It was still dripping, fresh, like it had just been pulled from... I dropped it back into the box. The blood smeared across the velvet, soaking into the fabric. My stomach twisted. The metallic scent clung to the air, stronger now. I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling, ready to call someone. But then I noticed something else. There was a small note at the bottom of the box, pale paper, folded neatly. My name was written on the front in elegant slanted handwriting. My pulse pounded in my ears. I swallowed hard, unfolded it with shaking hands. Wear it, love. It's yours. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I dropped the note. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. This wasn't normal. This wasn't some mistake. Someone knew my name. Someone had sent this to me. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The room suddenly felt too small, too dark. I grabbed the box, shoved it back shut, and ran to the door. I was going to throw it away. But the moment my fingers touched the handle, something knocked from the other side. A sharp, deliberate rap. I froze. The wind wasn't strong enough to make that sound. And through the peephole, the porch was empty. No footprints in the snow. No sign that anyone had ever been there. My breath came too fast. My skin felt too tight, stretched over a fear I didn't fully understand yet. I turned the lock, stepping back, heart hammering. Another knock, this time closer. Not at the door. From inside the house. I spun around, my chest locking up. The kitchen was empty, the hallway dark and silent, but I heard it. A soft tap, tap, tap. From the table. The box was moving. The lid lifted slightly, like something inside was pushing against it. A tiny creak as it shifted, sliding half an inch across the wood. I couldn't breathe. And then the locket chain moved. It slithered, slow and deliberate, like it was alive, unfurling itself from the box. The clasp clicked open on its own. The heart locket twitching, trembling, the blood inside it still fresh, still wet. A whisper curled through the room. Software close. Put it on. I staggered backward, shaking my head, my mouth too dry to scream. My fingers dug into my palm, nails biting into skin. I had to get out. I had to. The lights flickered. The room dimmed, shadows stretching impossibly long. The walls felt too close, the air thick and heavy. And then I saw it. A reflection in the kitchen window. A figure standing behind me, tall, motionless, watching. I didn't turn around. My body screamed to run, but I couldn't move. My breath came in ragged gasps, my vision blurring. My hands clenched at my sides, fingernails digging into flesh. The figure took a step closer. The whisper came again, curling against my ear like a breath. "Wear it, love. It's yours." A cold, wet touch brushed against my neck. I bolted. I don't remember getting to my car. I don't remember driving. The snow-covered streets a blur as I sped away from that house, from that thing, from the locket that still sat on my kitchen table, waiting. I checked into a motel, locking every door, every window, leaving the lights on. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The phantom touch still burned against my skin. I didn't go back, not for days. And when I finally did, when I forced myself to return in the light of day, the house was exactly as I left it, except for one thing, the box. It was gone. No bloodstains on the table, no trace that it had ever been there, just the faintest scent of something metallic in the air. And when I stepped back outside, when I finally turned to lock the door behind me, there was something in the snow. A single red ribbon curled neatly on the porch, waiting. Story number 6. The couple in the window. The first time I saw them, I thought it was a reflection. We had booked the cabin for a romantic Valentine's getaway, a secluded place in the mountains surrounded by thick forests and untouched snow. It was the kind of retreat where the world outside didn't exist, where there was no Wi-Fi, no cell service, just a crackling fireplace, warm blankets, and the quiet company of the person you loved. It was perfect. Or at least, it should have been. The first night after dinner, we stood by the large window watching the snowfall. The glass stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting the soft glow of the fire behind us. I wrapped my arms around Daniel's waist, resting my head against his shoulder, our reflections standing together in the glass. But then, something shifted. My breath caught. The reflections weren't quite right. At first, I thought it was a trick of the dim light, the flickering flames playing games with the glass, but when I looked closer, my stomach turned. The couple in the window wasn't us. Not exactly. They were standing in the same position, yes. The woman had my hair, my build, wearing the same thick sweater. The man was Daniel's height, his posture identical. But their faces were wrong. Their smiles were too wide, too stiff, and their eyes, they weren't watching the snow. They were looking at us. I turned quickly, my pulse hammering. Nothing. The cabin was just as it had been, warm and silent. I let out a shaky breath, forcing myself to laugh. "Guess I'm just tired," I muttered. Daniel squeezed my hand. "Long drive. Let's get some sleep." But as I stepped away, the reflection didn't move. I barely slept that night. The wind howled through the trees, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. The couple in the window, standing just a little too still, smiling just a little too wide. The next morning, I avoided the glass. I told myself I had imagined it, that exhaustion was making me see things. But when I reached for my phone on the nightstand, my fingers closed around something else, a piece of paper. The handwriting was delicate, slanted, and unfamiliar. "You look so much happier here. Stay." My throat tightened. I shook Daniel awake, my hands trembling as I shoved the note at him. "Tell me you wrote this." He blinked at it, groggy. "What? Number where did—" His voice trailed off as he sat up, suddenly alert. Neither of us had brought a pen. The windows were locked. The doors were bolted. No one had come in. The rest of the day I couldn't shake the unease clinging to me. Every time I walked past the window, I felt them watching. I didn't look. I wouldn't. But that night, I didn't have a choice. I woke up cold, my body aching with an unnatural chill. The fire had burned low, casting weak, dying embers across the wooden walls. Daniel was still asleep beside me, his breathing slow, steady. And then, from the darkness, a soft knock. I froze. It wasn't at the door. It was behind me, at the window. My breath hitched. Slowly, against every instinct screaming at me to stay still, I turned my head. They were standing right there, The glass separated us, but it felt like nothing at all. The couple in the window, our reflections but not, were pressed against it, their hands resting on the surface, their heads tilted just slightly too far. Their eyes were empty, black, endless voids. Their mouths stretched into something that might have been a smile but felt more like a wound. I couldn't breathe. Then, in perfect unison, their mouths moved. No sound came, but I understood the words. "Let us in." I scrambled out of bed, grabbing Daniel's arm, shaking him violently. "Wake up!" My voice came out strangled, barely a whisper. "Daniel, please." He groaned, sitting up, rubbing his eyes. "What? What's—" I pointed at the window, my chest heaving, but they were gone. Only our normal reflection stared back, bathed in the dim glow of the dying fire. Daniel sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. "Babe, you're freaking me out." I swallowed hard, my throat raw. "I saw them. There's nothing there." I shook my head violently, my heart slamming against my ribs. "No, you don't understand. They want us to—" A sound cut through my words, a slow, rhythmic creak, the rocking chair. It had been still all day, tucked into the corner of the cabin untouched, but now it rocked, slowly, steadily. Daniel turned pale. "Maybe it's the wind." "There's no wind inside." A beat of silence. The chair rocked again, the wood groaning like something unseen was sitting in it, watching, waiting. Then the fire blew out. Total darkness. I felt Daniel grab my wrist. His grip was ice cold. "We're leaving," he said, his voice shaking. We didn't bother packing. We grabbed our coats, our boots, practically sprinting out the door. The snow had buried our car up to the tires, but we didn't care. We dug, we shoved, we fought against the freezing night, until the engine roared to life. As the headlights cut through the darkness, I made one mistake. I looked back. The window was still there, a black rectangle against the dimly lit cabin, and in it, they stood, side by side, watching, smiling. But this time something was different. They weren't reflections anymore, they were waving. As we sped down the mountain, leaving the cabin behind, a final thought chilled me to the bone. The note had said, "You look so much happier here." Not happy. Happier. Like they had seen us before, like they had been watching all along. Story number 7. The heartbeat beneath the ice. The ice cracked beneath his weight. It was just a hairline fracture, barely visible under the thin layer of snow. But I heard it. A soft, sharp snap, like a bone breaking beneath too much pressure. My breath hitched, my fingers tightening around my scarf. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Ryan grinned, spinning lazily on his skates, the cold air turning his breath into ghostly clouds. "Relax. This lake has been frozen solid for weeks. It's fine." I wasn't so sure. It was Valentine's Day, and we had driven up to the mountains for a quiet weekend away. The lake, untouched and surrounded by towering pines, looked like something out of a postcard, but something about it felt wrong. The silence was too deep, too heavy, pressing against my ears like cotton. I followed Ryan onto the ice, my skates unsteady, my heart beating just a little too fast. The lake felt empty, hollow. Ryan skated ahead, his laughter echoing through the cold. "Come on, slowpoke." I hesitated, my eyes locked on the ice beneath my feet. The surface was smooth, but something about it made my stomach twist. The snow had been cleared away in patches, revealing the frozen water underneath. And in the pale glow of the setting sun, I could almost swear I saw something moving beneath it. A shadow, not a fish, not a crack. Something deeper, something shifting. My mouth went dry. "Ryan," I called out, but my voice barely carried in the empty air. He didn't hear me. He was already halfway across the lake, arms stretched wide like he owned the world. Then the noise came again. A deep, low thud, rhythmic, slow, like a heartbeat. I froze, my pulse hammering. The sound wasn't coming from the trees, wasn't coming from the wind. It was coming from beneath the ice. Ryan finally turned, his brows furrowed. "What's wrong?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My entire body locked up as the sound grew louder. A steady, unnatural pulse. Thud, thud, thud. I took a step back. The ice groaned beneath me, a long, tortured wail that sent a cold shiver down my spine. I glanced down and my breath caught in my throat. Something was looking back. A face, just beneath the surface. Pale, wide-eyed. A woman. Her mouth stretched open in a silent scream, her hands pressed against the ice like she was trying to claw her way out. I stumbled back, a scream choking in my throat. The ice beneath her face was clear, too clear, like a window into something that shouldn't be there. "Ryan," my voice cracked. "Get off the ice." Blood. I scrambled back, my pulse a frenzied drumbeat in my ears. Then Ryan's voice, software almost distant, behind me. "Babe?" I turned so fast my vision blurred. He was standing at the edge of the lake, dry, perfectly fine, too fine. His clothes were untouched, his hair neatly in place, his skin pale, almost translucent in the dimming light. "Ryan?" My voice was barely a whisper. He smiled. "What are you waiting for?" Something deep inside me screamed to run. I glanced back at the ice. The woman was gone, the cracks had disappeared, but the blood was still there. I forced myself to look at him again. His smile hadn't changed. It was wide, unmoving, unnatural. Then I noticed something else, his reflection, or rather the lack of one. I stumbled back. "You're not..." His head tilted. "Come on, love. It's getting cold." My chest tightened, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't real. This wasn't possible. He took a step toward me. "Don't you love me?" My vision blurred. The heartbeat beneath the ice was deafening now. Thud, thud, thud. Something else moved beneath the surface, stretching, shifting, waiting. I ran. I don't remember getting back to the cabin. I don't remember locking the door, but I do remember the last thing I saw before I shut the blinds. Ryan, standing at the edge of the lake, smiling, waiting, and right beside him, her, the woman beneath the ice, watching, listening, waiting for the next crack to open. Story number 8, A Rose for the Dead. The first rose arrived on Valentine's Day, exactly 1 year after my fiancé died. I found it on my doorstep, dusted with fresh snow, the petals dark red against the white. No note. No footprints leading up to the house. Just the rose, perfectly placed as if it had been waiting for me. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a delivery meant for someone else. Maybe a neighbor leaving an anonymous gesture of kindness. But when I picked it up, a deep chill spread through my fingers, colder than the winter air, as if the stem had been buried in ice. A strange scent clung to it, something beyond flowers, something metallic and faded. I brought it inside, setting it on the kitchen counter. My stomach twisted. Because I knew that scent. It smelled like earth, like old, damp soil, like a grave. I barely slept that night. I kept telling myself it was nothing, that grief was making me imagine things. But when I woke up in the morning, the rose was gone, the counter was empty. In its place was a small pile of dirt. I swept it away, convincing myself I had thrown the rose out and simply forgotten. But the next year, on Valentine's Day, another one appeared. Same doorstep, same perfect placement, same chilling absence of footprints in the snow. This time, I didn't bring it inside. I left it out there, watching it from my window, waiting to see if someone would come back for it. The hours passed, the sun set, the wind picked up, howling through the trees. But the rose remained, untouched. At midnight, I finally caved. I stepped outside, shivering in the cold, and bent down to pick it up. The moment my fingers brushed the petals, something shifted in the air. The wind stopped, the night went silent, and then I heard it, a whisper, not from the wind, not from the trees, from the ground beneath me. I dropped the rose and ran inside, locking the door behind me. My pulse was erratic, my breath sharp and uneven. I didn't sleep at all that night. By morning, the rose was gone. For the next few months, nothing happened. I convinced myself it had been my imagination, a cruel trick of my own mind.
But as February crept closer, an unease settled over me, deep in my bones. I waited, and on Valentine's Day, at exactly midnight, I heard a soft thud at my doorstep. I didn't open the door right away. I couldn't. My hands trembled as I reached for the knob, my breath coming in slow, shallow gasps. When I finally gathered the courage, I found not one but 2 roses lying in the snow, one fresh, one wilted. A deep, suffocating dread filled my chest. I stared at them, my fingers twitching at my sides. A part of me wanted to kick them away, to burn them, to pretend they weren't there.
But I already knew what they meant. I wasn't supposed to be alone anymore. That night I dug through old boxes, searching for anything that could explain what was happening. I pulled out my fiancé's things, old photographs, love letters, memories frozen in time. I hadn't touched them in a year, the pain still too raw, too sharp. Then at the bottom of a dusty box, I found it. A pressed rose sealed inside an envelope, a note scrawled in his handwriting beneath it. For my love, even in death. My vision blurred. My fingers tightened around the paper. My fiancé had always given me roses, every Valentine's Day, without fail. It was his tradition. But he was gone. I whispered his name into the empty room, and the lights flickered. The air grew heavy, thick with something unseen. The temperature dropped. My breath fogged in front of me. Then, behind me, a whisper. My name. I spun around, my pulse hammering. The room was empty, but the scent of roses filled the air. I barely made it through the night. Every shadow in my house felt deeper, darker, filled with something watching. I locked my bedroom door, but the moment I turned off the light, I heard it again. A soft thud against the window. I knew what I would find before I even looked. A rose, pressed against the glass. The next morning I made a decision. I drove to the cemetery, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The roads were slick with ice, the trees bare, the entire world frozen in silence. I didn't stop at the gate. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight to his grave, and there, resting against the headstone, was a single rose. I felt the blood drain from my face. The wind picked up, whipping through the trees. My heartbeat roared in my ears. I knelt, running my fingers over the name carved in stone, my breath shaky. "Is it you?" My voice was barely above a whisper. Nothing, just the wind, the distant creak of bare branches. I reached out hesitantly, touching the rose. The ground beneath me shifted. A heartbeat, not mine, deep, slow. Thud, thud. I jerked back. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. The grave moved. The heartbeat grew louder. I stumbled away, gasping. The world tilted, the snow beneath my feet feeling too soft, too unsteady. I turned, running, nearly slipping on the ice, my pulse a frantic drumbeat. I didn't stop until I was back in my car, the doors locked, my breath ragged. I stared at the grave through the windshield. The rose was gone. I don't know how I made it home. I don't remember driving. But when I stepped onto my porch, my heart nearly stopped. The roses were waiting. 3 now, 1 fresh, 1 wilted, and 1 completely blackened. I don't open my door at midnight anymore. I don't check my windows when I hear a soft thud against the glass, but no matter what I do, every Valentine's Day, the roses come back, and every year, there's 1 more. I don't know what happens when they run out. I don't want to find out. Story number 9. The Man in the Snow. The first time I noticed the footprints, I was halfway home. Snow had been falling all evening, covering the streets in a thick, untouched blanket. The world was quiet, the kind of silence that only comes in winter, when even the wind holds its breath. I had just left a small Valentine's dinner with friends, deciding to walk the short distance home instead of calling a cab. It was only a 10-minute walk. I told myself I needed the fresh air, but halfway through I saw them, footprints, fresh ones, right next to mine. My steps slowed, my breath turning to mist in front of me. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see someone behind me, but the street was empty. The footprints stretched beside mine, perfectly aligned, as if someone had been walking next to me the whole time. I turned forward again, my pulse speeding up. Maybe I hadn't noticed someone earlier. Maybe they had walked ahead, turned a corner, disappeared into a house, but as I kept walking, the footprints kept pace with mine. Perfectly. I stopped. They stopped. The air felt heavier, pressing down on my skin. My fingers twitched in my coat pockets. I took another step. So did they, but there was no one there. A deep chill crawled up my spine. My breath felt too loud, too sharp. The streetlights above buzzed softly, casting long, twisted shadows across the snow. The footprints beside me were crisp, freshly pressed into the powder, but mine were the only ones that had a beginning. I could see where I had started walking, where my steps first broke the smooth layer of white. The other set, no starting point, they just appeared. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I swallowed hard, trying to shake the growing unease in my chest. This was ridiculous. There was an explanation. There had to be. But then, the footprints moved. Not mine. The other set. I hadn't taken a step. I was completely still. But they took one. Closer to me. I staggered back, my breath catching in my throat. The street stretched ahead, empty. The houses were dark, their windows lifeless. The only sound was the soft crunch of the snow beneath my own boots. And then, a whisper. Not words. Not a voice I could understand, just a sound, low, breathless, right behind me. I spun around, my chest tightening. Nothing. Just the snow-covered sidewalk, the empty road, the dim glow of streetlights flickering against the night. I forced myself to move, one step then another. The footprints followed. I didn't run. I told myself not to. Running meant acknowledging that something was wrong. Running meant panic. Running meant that whatever was out there might chase me. But I walked faster. The footprints kept up. The whisper came again. Closer. The road stretched longer than it should have, my house still too far in the distance. I knew this street. I had walked it countless times. But tonight, it felt different. Endless. Then ahead of me, under the next streetlight, a figure, standing perfectly still in the snow, not moving, not breathing, just waiting. My steps faltered. The air in my lungs turned to ice. The figure was tall, wrapped in a long dark coat. A hat sat low over its face, casting it in shadow. I couldn't see its features. I couldn't even see if it was facing me. But I felt it watching. The footprints beside mine stopped. My breath came in shallow gasps, my body locking in place. I wanted to turn around, go back. But I knew if I did, it would be behind me, watching, waiting. I forced myself forward. Past one house, then another. The figure didn't move. The wind whispered through the trees, low and hollow. The streetlight above flickered, the shadows stretching. Then, it took a step toward me. I ran. I don't remember the last stretch home. My vision blurred, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I fumbled with my keys, my hands slick with sweat despite the cold. The moment I got inside, I slammed the door shut, locking it, bolting it, every part of me shaking. Silence. Nothing but the sound of my own breath. I didn't dare look out the window. I didn't want to know if it had followed me. I made my way to the bedroom, my limbs heavy, exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. My mind told me I was safe now, that I had imagined it. Then I heard it. A soft thud from the front porch, like footsteps in the snow. I froze. Another thud, closer. My stomach twisted painfully. Then something slid under the door. A single piece of paper. My name was written on it. I forced myself to pick it up, my fingers numb. There were only 3 words. You walked with me. A knock sounded against the door. I never opened it. By morning, the snow had covered all footprints, all but one set, leading away from my door and into the woods. Story number 10, Love Notes from the Attic. The first note appeared the night we moved in. It was Valentine's Day, and James had surprised me by booking a secluded cabin for the weekend. A cozy 2-story wooden lodge nestled deep in the mountains, surrounded by endless snow. No neighbors, no traffic, just us, a fireplace, and the promise of a quiet, romantic escape. We arrived late, just as the sun dipped below the trees. Snow had piled high against the windows, the air outside sharp and freezing. Inside, the cabin smelled like old wood and something else, something faintly floral like dried roses. It had been sitting empty for months, untouched, waiting for someone to bring it back to life. James carried in the last of our bags while I explored, running my fingers along the wooden banister, admiring the antique furniture. It was beautiful in an old-fashioned way, high ceilings, faded wallpaper, thick velvet curtains that swallowed the windows whole. Then I found the attic door. It was at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar, a thin draft slipping through the crack. A single wooden staircase led upward, disappearing into the shadows. Something about it made my stomach twist. I reached out, hesitating for just a second, before pushing it open. The attic was small, cluttered with dust-covered furniture, forgotten trunks, and cobwebs stretching between the rafters. The air was heavier up there, thick with the scent of age, of things left behind. That's when I saw it. A small yellowed envelope sitting in the middle of the floor. It was old, the edges worn and crumbling, as if it had been waiting for years. My name was written on the front in elegant slanted handwriting. I swallowed hard. James. My voice wavered. Footsteps echoed up the stairs. A moment later, he appeared in the doorway, dusting snow off his coat. "What's up?" I held up the envelope. "Did you put this here?" His brow furrowed. "Number what is it?" I hesitated, then slid my finger under the seal, peeling it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the ink faded but legible. "You came back. I knew you would." My pulse stuttered. I looked up at James, my fingers tightening around the note. "This isn't funny." He took it from me, his expression darkening as he read. "Maybe the last owners left it behind." He shrugged, but there was an unease in his voice. "Let's go back downstairs. It's freezing up here." I didn't argue. That night, I barely slept. The fire crackled in the living room, casting long shadows across the ceiling. James had already drifted off beside me, his breaths deep and steady. But I lay awake, staring at the dark hallway, at the attic door that now sat closed. At some point, exhaustion won. My eyes slipped shut. Then, sometime in the dead of night, a whisper, software close. My name. I jolted upright, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was dark, silent except for the wind howling outside. But something was different. A new note, lying on my nightstand. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. "I missed you. I never forgot." My breath caught. I shook James awake, shoving the note at him. His groggy confusion faded the second he saw it. He sat up, rubbing his face. "Okay, this is messed up." "We need to leave," I whispered. He nodded. We packed in record time, shoving clothes into bags, grabbing our coats. But when James reached for the front door... It wouldn't open. The lock turned, the deadbolt slid, but the door wouldn't budge, as if something heavy pressed against the other side. A chill crawled up my spine. James swore under his breath, moving to the windows. The snow outside was higher than before, piled unnaturally against the glass, sealing us in. Then, from upstairs, a creak. Not the house settling, not the wind. Footsteps. James grabbed my wrist, his grip tight. "We're leaving. Now." We sprinted toward the back door, yanking at the handle. It wouldn't move. None of them would, and then... The attic door creaked open, slowly, deliberately. My breath turned to ice in my lungs. James and I stood frozen, staring up the dark staircase. A whisper drifted down. Software almost gentle. "Come back to me." The air thickened. My vision blurred. The walls felt closer, the shadows stretching. Then, a single red rose floated down the stairs, landing at my feet. I don't remember screaming, I don't remember how we got out, but somehow we did. By morning, the snow had cleared just enough for us to break through the door, stumbling into the freezing air, gasping for breath. We didn't look back. We drove straight home, the cabin shrinking in the rearview mirror. 2 days later, I found another note. Not at the cabin, not in my mailbox, but inside my home, on my nightstand. The ink was still fresh. "You can't leave me again." I burned it. It didn't matter. The next morning, another took its place. They haven't stopped since. And every Valentine's Day, a single red rose appears outside my door, waiting. If you made it this far, you're officially brave, or maybe just lucky. But tell me, have you ever experienced something chilling, something that made your blood run cold? Share your horror stories in the comments below. I'd love to read them, if I can sleep after. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a terrifying tale. Also, check out the videos appearing on your screen right now. You might just find your next nightmare. Until next time, stay safe, or at least try to.